Are your stories boring? It could be that they're just missing something. There are several things that not everyone thinks of that belong in a story, and without them, it falls flat. Today you're gonna learn the 4 key materials that every good story has to have, plus 4 engaging ways to convey your story to your students to keep them riveted. Let's do it. Last time we had a couple questions about stories. The first one was, how do I find or create good stories? And the second was, how do I tell good stories well? Now the simple answer to the first question is to know your message and then also have a solid plot structure for your story. So we know the rough blueprint to our story house, but now it's time to build that story. So what are the materials and tools that we're gonna need? Well, there's still a lot to cover about how to tell good stories, which we will touch on next time. Here are the 4 main building materials that every good story has. You can think of these like ingredients to make a delicious story. The first one is conflict. This is one of the most important parts of a good story. Every story needs conflict. It needs tension. No tension, no stakes. No stakes, no involvement. No involvement means your audience doesn't care. Conflict can include unanswered questions, internal struggle, turmoil, doubt, confrontations, tough decisions, unfavorable odds. It can't be a straight line to the prize because it never is. Life is full of ups and downs, and so are stories. So your story should have its share of issues throughout, and at least one big overarching conflict running through the whole thing. When the big one finally gets resolved, that's when the story is over. Growth. We want to see change happen. We want to see our hero grow into someone who's better than they were before, whether that's spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, whatever. By the end, we want the hero to be at his best. And think about it, nobody wants him to be the same person he was when he started. Resolution. If it's growth we want for the hero, then it's resolution we want for the story as a whole. We want our questions answered, we want the loose ends tied up, we want the wrongs to be righted, we want to see justice done, we want the objective to be achieved, and we want the good guys to win. We want a clear, decisive victory and a nice, happy ending. Now, it doesn't all have to happen in a predictable way, but having the big questions answered is really important. A message. Even though it's usually hidden within the story, the message is still really important. And as much as we love to just be entertained, we also want to learn, we want to be inspired, and we want to feel good at the end of the story. Maybe even change ourselves. Having a clear message within the story can give us some food for thought, sometimes for days. And it leaves us chewing on new ideas and fresh perspectives. And we like it like that. Now, if your story structure is strong, most of these qualities are going to result pretty naturally. Now, these are all things that we need in our story to make it awesome, but how exactly do we convey all of that? I mean, we can't just say, hey guys, feel a sense of resolution. I really need you to care about this person's struggle now. Quick everyone, panic! Now, while there's still more that we'll discuss later about what you can do, for now, we're going to focus on what you can say that will convey what it is that you want to get across. You can kind of think of it like different speech methods to nail your story home. First off, description. This is going to be the bulk of what you do as a storyteller. The majority of the experience depends on you and your ability to describe what's going on. You want to use simple, descriptive words to paint a picture that will keep your students interested. Narrative summary. Similar to description, narrative summary is when you explain what happened in a story, but in a shortened way, kind of like a narrator would. This should be used for telling the less important parts of the story that are still needed. Now, unfortunately, this is what most poor storytellers tend to use for the whole story. Dialogue. Dialogue is saying what the character said, not just summarizing. And dialogue is always more interesting than narrative summary. Watch this. The boy asked the officer why the red light was blinking, and the officer said it meant trouble. Sir, asked the young boy, pointing up at the red blinking light, why is that light blinking like that? The old officer looked down at the boy with a set jaw. That's a distress signal coming from another station. It means trouble, son. We've got trouble, and it's headed this way. Now, that takes a little bit longer, but do you feel the difference? It makes it feel like you're in the story. So you'll want to make sure you strike a good balance between having enough dialogue, but then also using narrative summary when you have to. But when possible, Do your best to change to make sure you're including the most important dialogue. Drive. This is a mindset that intentionally uses all of the above to continually remind the listener about what's at stake. In other words, why should the audience continue to care? You want to make sure you're always reminding them about what is moving the story forward, reminding them about the stakes and the goal, and that's how you can help them get wrapped up into the story. Every story needs an almost constant element of mystery to keep the audience hooked. So you want to open a curiosity loop, and then open another one, and then close one, and then open two more. There should always be something to wonder or worry about. And this goes back to creating conflict from before. And the conflict is not just for the person in the story, it's actually for your audience. Another way to keep your kids engaged is through foreshadowing phrases. Things like this.
But they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Little did they know what was about to happen next. It started out as a normal trip, but they had no idea that they wouldn't all come back alive. What happened next would change everything.
Phrases like these hint that something big is going to happen, and it encourages the audience that yes, this will be worth your time. And foreshadowing basically means adding in seemingly trivial details or information or comments that later turn out to be really important to the story. By using all of these aspects of structure and storytelling, you've got the key elements of a riveting story and the best storytelling methods to convey that story well. Check out this next video to catapult your storytelling to the next level by learning how to tell your story. This is the good stuff.